Okay, form. What does something look like? What forms do we think about when we think about Brooklyn? I wanna think about Brooklyn. I want to think about its literary history. A lot has been written about it. Walt Whitman did a wonderful poem about crossing on the Brooklyn Ferry. Thomas Hart Crane did a poem about the Brooklyn Bridge. And so I was thinking about that. I start to think about the idea of a book as a bridge from you to what the author wants to say, to their ideas. And so, but also the form of a bridge is not unlike a book, especially if you're on the Brooklyn Bridge and the span of the cables. It makes a kind of, it's hard to explain, but it makes a kind of web that reaches out and feels to me like an open book. Sometimes your first idea ends up being your best idea, and sometimes you just simply need to work through your first idea just to see if it's working or not, and then if it's not working, then you cast it aside and keep going. And don't be afraid of coming up with an idea that you love and then realizing that you have to get rid of it because it's not working the way you thought it was going to. I'm getting this idea of the Brooklyn Bridge as a book. That makes sense to me. I can clearly see it in my head, which is always a good sign. Now, again, just because I can see it in my head doesn't mean that the reality of it is going to work. But I want there to be some kind of what we call a visual trick to this. It needs to somehow go beyond an image of the Brooklyn Bridge. There needs to be an unexpected component to it. Sometimes when you use images that you've seen a million times, but you use them in hopefully a new or interesting way, it helps you to see them all over again and rediscover them. And that's what I'm going to be going for here. But what if you're working on a poster for something that doesn't readily draw up a visual image? I've been the art director for a series of posters every year for National Poetry Month. One was using a quote from Emily Dickinson and just using an image of her dress. One of the interesting things about Emily Dickinson is she was not recognized in her lifetime, so there's only one photograph of her that everybody's seen a zillion times. There's a museum dedicated to her in Massachusetts that has a dress that she wore. And so there's a contemporary photograph of this dress, and the quote is about that art is a house that wants to be haunted. And so it almost looks sort of ghost-like, and it works as a visual. Another one I did was for Walt Whitman, probably best known for Leaves of Grass. And so there's an image of grass on it, but there's also an image of a cast, a life-size cast of his hand in brass, and the quote's about, you know, even if I'm away, I'll always be with you. These posters are going to schools, and I wanted to recreate the cast of the hand absolute life size so that a student or anybody can put their hand on Walt Whitman's hand and feel like they are touching him and compare the size of their hand to his hand. And so even if it seems like there are no possibilities, there always are. You just need to be able to dig and look and find them, hopefully learn about them. And the more you learn, the more the possibilities will open up.